hearing on the draft annual estimate. And so I call this public hearing to order. Deputy Clerk Bonilla, can you please do the roll call?
Yes, thank you. Controller Morton is absent, but we have Assistant,
Corporation Counsel.
no,
I mean,
Controller.
Assistant Controller.
Okay.
7
Assistant
o'clock.
Controller Hamilton,
Here.
Council President Gleason,
Here.
Mayor Patterson Howard.
Here,
All right. And I'm gonna read the notice.
sure.
Thank you. This is the Board of Estimate and Contract Public Hearing Notice. Today, Wednesday, December 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers. This notice was advertised in the Journal News on November 27th and December 2nd, 2024. It was also posted on our city's website and the Rotunda and social media as well. Thank you.
Okay, so the way the public hearing works is I will kind of just walk through a PowerPoint. I will ask for those who want to speak against the budget to come forward. You have 3 minutes to speak, and time will be kept by the deputy clerk, so you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And then we will close those against the budget, and then we will open for those who want to come and speak for the budget. Then they will speak, and after that is finished, we will give closing comments. It is a hearing, and so as you're speaking, we don't answer questions. We take down your questions, we take down your notes, we take down your suggestions. But unlike last night, it is not a community conversation and a dialogue. That's why I do too, so that people who have questions that they want answered on the spot can come to the conversation, and those who come to the hearing, it is a hearing, and we do not interact back and forth with questions. So that is the structure of it, and then we will close it. Once we close the against, it will be closed. Once we close the for, it will be closed, and we do not go back and reopen. Okay? So that is the structure of the public hearing, and we can start when you come forward. Okay, yes, if you could please turn off your ringers. If we can please limit speaking, because the acoustics in here, you can pretty much hear everything. There is an exit here, and in the rear of the room, there is a bathroom. A women's bathroom is immediately kind of out the door on your right. And then if you turn the corner is the men's bathroom. There is a staircase going further and into the middle, and then there is another emergency exit when you go out the back. If you go to the right, there is a staircase in case of emergency. So with that being said, we will start off with those who want to speak against the budget. If you can. Oh, I'm sorry, going through the summary. All righty. So Tim or someone, oh, okay, Jahi, thank you. All righty, so those who want a copy, it's here. Those who want to follow along, it's there. If you want to scan and we have copies of the budget in the front as well, so feel free to come and take a copy. So we are expecting a 4.97% increase this year, which is part of the draft budget. So it is the draft annual estimate right now is listed at a 4.97% tax increase. The assessed valuation of properties in the city of Mount Vernon at this time is $145,759,858. That is down $700,000 from 2025. We had an uptick in 2023, but because of certiorieries or tax challenges, we have seen a decrease from 2024 to 2025 of about 700,000. That does impact the base number that we have for which we are assessing taxes. How your tax bill is impacted by the 4.97% increase from 24 to 25. And we just use 10K assessed value because that is the average that is discussed in Mount Vernon. There are people who have homes that are assessed above that. There are people who have homes assessed below it. But if your home is assessed at about 10K it would be a $249 increase in your taxes for the year, which would come out to about $20.75 per month. So if your house is assessed at $20K, it would be about a $500. So that's how that goes. One of the biggest impacts to the budget, year over year is the continuation of unfunded mandates and stagnant state aid for the past decade received to the city of Mount Vernon. Our state aid has remained at 7.1 million or 7,155,691. And during the same time period, the population of Mount Vernon has increased by nearly 7,000 residents. Inflation during this increase on aggregate is 26.52, but the state aid has remained at 7.1 million. During the same time period for the city of Mount Vernon, our health insurance from the New York State Health Insurance Program has increased 2 million each year during the same time period. So it's gone from about 13.1 million in 2013 to 27.5 million in 2025. If you include retirement cost, then you're looking at a $9.6 million in 2013 to $15.2 million in 2025. And the cumulative cost balloons to about $3 million each year, $3 to $3.2 million each year of unfunded increases or mandated increases. The total sum of our benefits for the city of Mount Vernon is $49.6 million, which is 1/3 of the total budget and accounts for a significant tax deficit that we start off with every budget. Once again, these are just two examples of mandated increases that Mount Vernon doesn't have control over, but we have to find ways to absorb, which lessen the amount that we have to spend on operational costs or forces us to increase taxes. Now, all of the other cities also experience these same unfunded mandates. The difference between the cities around us is that they have a fund balance. A fund balance is equivalent to your savings account at home. You have a fund balance. And so if you have an increase in something, you're usually able to go into your savings account and absorb that. If you don't have a savings account, then you have to bring in additional revenue. So Mount Vernon does not have a fund balance. This is the 5th year that we've had a budget that has no fund balance. When you look at White Plains right now, I believe White Plains used $16 million of their fund balance to be able to keep their tax rate at a reasonable level. New Rochelle just used $3 million of their fund balance to keep their taxes at a reasonable level. We don't have a fund balance to go to. In 2022 and 2023, we utilized $5 million for each of those years. In essence, like a fund balance. This is COVID money. We received $41 million in COVID money, and we were able to use up to $10 million of COVID money to offset some of the financial distress of the city. And so each year for those 2 years, we put $5 million in the budget to offset the budget. If it were not for that $5 million, that right there is about a 10% increase to the tax rate without that $5 million. That is no longer available to us going forward. The next slide. This slide just shows the fund balance and how the fund balance and available fund balance has helped to keep tax rates historically lower. And in years where you did not have a fund balance, then taxes were higher. So if you look at 2014, the tax rate was over 7% in 2014, and there was no use of a fund balance. The tax rate was 3% in 2015. I'm assuming that was an election year. And there was no fund balance to use, but it was a 3% tax increase. In 2016, we used $2 million of a fund balance, and you had a 3% tax increase. 2017, we used $3 million of the fund balance. In 2018, the fund balance was used at a rate of about $5.5 million with a 0% tax increase. 2019, the taxes stayed at 2% at the tax cap with no fund balance. But for 2019 and 2020, the state comptroller also said that our budget was pretty much a lie, and that revenues were inflated and expenses were decreased, or, well, not decreased, but they were underestimated, just to artificially keep the tax rate at a certain level, which also pushed the city into deeper financial crisis. In 2021, it's a blue line. It's not a fund balance. We just took the payroll that the city had paid out in 2021 up until about the February date that the budget was passed, and said that was the fund balance, right? Because by then, we were, the budget wasn't passed until the end of February. And we said, well, we've spent some money already this year, so we'll credit the money that we've spent on payroll up until this date, and we'll put it in the budget as the fund balance. And that kept the budget increase to about 3.5%, I think it was about 3.6%. In 2022 and in 2023, as you saw, we had the 5 million in. And in, 1 year, it was a menial increase of about 3%. And the increase jumped after we no longer had the ARPA money available to us as medical insurance, retirement continued to climb. So in 2024, we saw an increase of 7.71. And in 2025, again, without a fund balance, we're looking at a 4.97% increase. The other thing that we've had to add into the budget based on the state comptroller's March 2021 report and evaluation of our budget, was contingencies. We had to put in a contingency for collective bargaining, because never had that been part of the budget. And that was because there was a fund balance. They're like, so how do you pay for collective bargaining? And they said, well, we just usually put it, the city had a pretty decent fund balance. And so they said that. But without a fund balance, we had to actually put into the budget a collective bargaining contingency line so that you could pay for step increases and so that you could pay for contract increases, especially if you were in a contract year. So the sewer and refuse sustainability fee that we put into the budget in 2021, there is no increase in that. There has been no increase in that fee in 4 years, and there is no increase in that fee this year. So some of the budget expenditure assumptions, the total increase in departmental appropriations are what you call other than personnel services. So it's not salary and it's not benefits. It's electricity, supplies, the oil, the gas for the city fleet, paper products, office products, software licenses, and platforms and things of that nature for the day-to-day operation of the city. That department, the citywide appropriation has increased by 0.42%, 0.42, less than 0.5%, or 385,761 from 2024. Departments have been instructed to hold the line on operation spending, which accounts for approximately 10% of the budget. And you have to be able to operate. You have to have phones, you have to have gas and electric and office supplies. The largest increase in the appropriations is to the benefits line, which is $3.2 million increase from 2024. Actually, the salaries in 2025 have decreased in the budget, even though we have step increases. The salaries have decreased. We eliminated $1.4 million of positions to the budget. And so there has been a decrease, I need my glasses, of $257,819. The increase in medical, again, is 2.5 million. The increase in retirement is 732,000, and the increase in Social Security is 62,373. The next slide shows the budget allocation. Our budget is $152,220,283. Of that, again, 48% of it is salaries throughout the city. We have 22 departments. 41% of that is personnel benefits, insurances, medical insurance, retirement, social security, things of that nature, workman's comp, and then 11% operation expenses. It's actually 10 point something. Of the benefits, 46% of it is dental and health, 25% is state retirement, 9% social security, 15% is miscellaneous / contingency, which again is the collective bargaining, debt service, and other charges. But it's $61 million is that budget. Salaries by department. The salaries across the city are $72,922,939. The police department is the biggest department and has the highest amount of salaries at 33% of the budget. The fire department comes in second at 25%. DPW is 20%, and the rest of the city, including electeds and all administrative staff, is 22%. Overall, the revenue in this budget has increased by $318,834 from 2024. And you might say, well, that doesn't seem like much of a push. Well, it is a push when you look at the second bullet. We had to remove $1.8 million of revenue from the budget. And we had to remove the $1.8 million of revenue from the budget because on the sale of foreclosed homes, you cannot make a profit. You cannot make a profit. Historically, if you were selling a foreclosed home, you could collect the taxes and the city kept whatever above the taxes were. That cannot be done anymore. You can only keep what the taxes were and some small minimal fees. And if you foreclose on a home and you sell it for much more, the overage goes back to the state of New York, and the communities can no longer keep them. And so that is, we had to pull $1.8 million out on the gain on sale of tax acquired properties. The city of Mount Vernon has finally received authorization. We did put the red light cameras in last year. We didn't know we wouldn't get the approval until 10 months, well, kind of 12 months after we had asked for it from the state of New York, and to implement the red light cameras. And so we do anticipate this revenue in 2025. The building department has received increased revenue, and so we have budgeted for that. The strength of our economy, we have increased the sales tax revenue in this budget from 28 to 29 million. A lot of that has to also do with online sales. We don't have the biggest, strongest downtown district, but we do benefit from online sales as that tax does come to us. And there's just a trend also in people shopping, you know, more online. I think I already talked about taking out the 1.8 million. And we're, you know, potentially looking to ask the state if we can increase the sales tax in 2026, but that won't impact the budget if we do get an approval for that until 2026. So we don't have that in the budget for this year. And when it comes to workforce reduction, I've said we have decreased positions in the executive and middle management throughout the city by 17.5 positions for a cost savings of $1.4 million. And I have to be honest, you know, for years and decades, people would still budget for that and put that in the budget, even if they're not going to fill those positions or they're not guaranteed to fill those positions. Why? Because if you have revenue shortfall, then and you have savings that is budgeted, then it helps to build your fund balance, right? But we don't want to budget for something that most likely we're not going to fill. Because we are tightening our belts and we don't want to pass an extra 2% on to the taxpayers at the same time. So we took it out of the budget. Future revenue opportunities. We've increased collection for parking enforcement in 2024, and we believe that will continue in 2025. We have gotten new ticketing kind of hand machines. And we're trying to get them some used cars so that they can move and deal with parking enforcement across the city because it is pretty bad. That is a revenue stream. We are adding more stringent traffic enforcement measures involved, including the red light cameras. And we are looking for final approval for the speed cameras. And speed cameras, again, will improve quality of life. As we know, people are speeding through many of the neighborhoods. People just don't go through red lights, but they speed through, you know, primary and secondary and tertiary streets. And, you know, those aren't necessarily law-abiding citizens. And so why not make some money off of them when they're breaking the rules, and we can make our city safer at the same time. We are focused on completing our comprehensive land use plan, which will increase efficiency in developing market rate mixed use housing, expanding our retail tax base, and expanding our industrial property usage. And so we have been meeting with different industrial property owners throughout the city to bring some of those properties back into full use. We have some empty industrial properties. We want to bring more sales tax, more jobs back into the city with that. With the comprehensive plan, as we build more market rate housing, it is not just market rate, but it's mixed use housing as well. Mixed use meaning commercial on the bottom, market rate on the top. And that increases restaurants, that increases stores. That will bring stores that we want to shop at in Mount Vernon. I mean, thank God for dollar stores, but we need far more than dollar stores to expand our tax base, expand the services that are available to our residents, and keep our residents' money in the community, right? Mount Vernon, everyone says that we're a poor community. We have our challenges, but we spend a lot of money in other communities because of what we don't have here, like a hotel, like restaurants, like clothing stores, like cafes, like art galleries, like places that you can go for social events and activities that are of strong quality. So we want to bring more of that here. And we are, again, meeting with property owners who are looking to do creative things with their properties. And we're having lots of very aggressive conversation, and the comprehensive plan will allow us to do that in a much more efficient manner. As it's been said, Mount Vernon has had a history of spot zoning. And when you do spot zoning, it takes so much longer for you to bring a project, a good project, to the city, and developers have to pay fees that are exorbitant over years. And so it's hard when businesses are looking to come into the city, that if you don't have a real land use plan, then they have to pay for rezoning, they have to pay for all of these things. And again, it can drag out for 3, 4, 5 years, and it's a turnoff. We do have a emerging cannabis industry, but again, at the same time, while we're going to benefit from the taxes from that, we're also going to limit the number of cannabis dispensaries that there can be throughout the city, because we don't need to be weed city at the same time. We're looking at light industrial ventures, like I said, hotels, to increase revenue in the city. And just to wrap this up, the city budget reflects a deliberate attempt to navigate real financial challenges. There's a difference between what we should have and what we do have, what we should be working with and what we are working with, right? And so while addressing the rising costs of healthcare and other benefits, we're seeing a 4.9% increase in overall taxes, but the budget is still very, very tight. It's a very, very tight and aggressive budget. To secure a more sustainable future, we're also looking at revenue diversification, continued operational efficiency, economic development. We are absolutely looking at implementing employee medical benefit contributions. That does not come out of my office. That rests in the Office of the Comptroller Medical Benefits. But we are in the process right now of having collective bargaining conversations. All of our contracts ended in December of 23. So our police department pays into their benefits, our fire department, after a few years of being a fireman, pay into their benefits. But right now, our other two major unions, CSEA and Teamsters, do not pay into their benefits. The electeds and the appointeds do not pay into their benefits. That's easier to change with electeds and appointeds, but when it comes to the unions, it has to be done through the collective bargaining process, which we are engaging in right now. That will help to bring in some money that will lessen the blow of the year-over-year medical insurance increases. You know, clearly we're looking to do all of these things to make sure that we could rebuild our reserves, because only until we are able to rebuild our reserves will we be able to use our reserves to absorb some of the year-over-year unfunded increases that come from the state, from our medical insurance, from our retirement benefits and things of that nature. And so building a reserve as well as economic development are going to be key. And economic development is, like I said, I think much more in our future. And when I first came in, it was a major, major challenge to even attract businesses because, you know, no one wanted to deal with our sewer and our stormwater issues. No one wanted to deal with the fact that we didn't have bridges. And so as we're dealing with stormwater and sewage issues, as we're building bridges, then businesses are seeing the real investment that we're putting as a city into Mount Vernon, and they're more willing to come in and partner with us. So that is the presentation. Do you have any opening comment? President Gleason?
My only opening comment really is to listen to what the residents, if they've reviewed it, what their main concerns are. Obviously, this is a draft budget. I take it very seriously, the comments that the residents have, and I'll bring everything back to council. And with that being said, no, you're good? All right.
Okay, so we're gonna start, we're opening up the hearing with those who want to speak against the budget. If you can please come forward. Again, you have 3 minutes, and please state your name.
Samuel Rivers, 30 Rockledge Avenue, Mount Vernon, New York. Good evening to the members of the Board of Estimate. I stand before you as a concerned citizen and a community activist, strongly voice my opinion and disapproval of the budget as presented, which namely fails to address the critical need of the diversified revenue streams to offset the rise in taxes and placing an undue burden on our residents. I did hear that the police and the fire pay into their budgets, to their health insurance. We need DPW and the CSEA union to pay as well. And, we have to be tough with them. Other municipalities privatize. If they don't want to pay in, we could privatize these services. Enough is enough. No corporate, job gives free 100% medical insurance these days. You have to pay into it. Otherwise, they could join the unemployment line. And we have to be tough. The building department, I'm glad to see that the building department is bringing in revenue, but compared to neighboring cities of New Rochelle, they generate $3 million annually. Mount Vernon, should follow suit. I'm glad to see that there's increased enforcement. The permitting process has been streamlined in Mount Vernon. And the fee structure, I believe, is adequate now. But we failed to take advantage of the opportunity zone that President Donald Trump, when he was in office before, created. We had opportunity zones. This is why all the buildings in New Rochelle went up. You have all these high-rise, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't because they have an influx of money, they create opportunity zones. All these buildings went up. They didn't pay any taxes and they benefited. So on a building, go New Rochelle, probably about almost $1 million in building permit fees on these high rises. And, nothing went up in Mount Vernon. We did not take advantage of the opportunity zones. And there was plenty, of them in Mount Vernon. Third Street was an opportunity zone. We didn't do anything with Third Street. I'm glad to see that we are targeting, the tax liens, but I see that we're only gonna start with the commercial. We need to start with everyone. The commercial tax liens, people have businesses, they pay sales tax. Sales tax is part of the budget. And most of these people that are behind on the homeowners, and Councilman Box Hill said that you don't want to change the landscape of the city. Most of these people, they know that Mount Vernon has not had an auction since 2016. If you look and run title reports, 80% of these people that are behind on taxes, they've been sold. They sell the deed for like $50,000. They are long gone. They're not in these houses. And these people are renovated, they're just collecting rent and they're just waiting. They know the laws have changed in Mount Vernon. You can't profit. So you got to take this on a case by case basis. 80% of these people, if you run the simple search, these properties have changed hands, even though you didn't foreclose on it. So you're not putting people on the street. You have these people that, I don't want to call out a particular group, but they walk around the street and they offering 10,000, 20,000 for these deeds. They renovating, charging these astronomical rents. And then I'm saying, let's be realistic. Mount Vernon is,
Need you to just wrap up.
yes,
Okay,
we need to change. Gentrification is not bad. Cities like Brooklyn, Harlem, Jersey City embrace gentrification and they're better off. So we need to, we are stuck in the Stone Ages. We just need to get going. We have good, valuable
Okay,
4
to
square
wrap up.
miles.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rivers. We appreciate you. Thank you. Next, who is speaking against the budget, if you can please come forward so we don't have to keep calling, if you're here to speak against the budget.
Yes, my name is Gabriel Thompson. I live here in Mount Vernon. I just want to very quickly point out that the Supreme Court decision was because taking without proper compensation is unconstitutional. And it was a unanimous decision. And it was because communities like Mount Vernon, working class and working poor, were having their equity stripped by municipalities who foreclosed on them. They still had equity and it was kept by the municipality. So I wouldn't want to be caught dead saying that Supreme Court decision was wrong. That was a unanimous decision. And I hope that it seems sometimes like it's spoken like it's a bad thing. I hope no one is of that opinion, at least in this room, who's aligned with me politically. I would like to say that I think that it's absolutely ridiculous that first responders in this city put skin in the game in their healthcare. And the elected somehow passed a collective bargaining agreement that they don't have to. So the bureaucrats in City Hall don't have skin in the game, right? The CBAs, they approve, and the police and the fire do. I mean, to me, and it was said it was very easy to make it for the appointed and the electeds. Is that in this budget? Have we done that? Because it was said it was very easy. So I want to know if that was done for appointeds and electeds. Someone said it was easy. Also, I just want to say that there's a lot of excuses. We're in violation of the charter. This budget was due October 25th. The hearing was due November 19th. And now council will be in violation of the charter because their hearing is due December 5th. And it was told us because, we don't have one number from the state, which is factually inaccurate. They're publicly available. But it's also kind of like pissing on me and telling me it's raining because the budget is full of assumptions, right? That's what budgets are. He knows that. You better know that. They're assumptions. They're not hard numbers. It's not hard to estimate. You're the board of estimate. The estimate is a budget. These are synonyms. It is not hard to estimate what those will be. They are not unfunded mandates. They're actually funded. That's why we have to pay into them. Pensions and healthcare for unions are not unfunded mandates. It's just not legally, structurally. They're just not. It's a fact. I think that the problem in Mount Vernon, like we've been here how many years, right? We got no fund balance. That's your fault. Budget for it. This is, how many budgets have we done, right? I'm appalled. I was told there was 7.7% increase last year so that we could pay the retro pay of the unions and we could deal with the increased salaries. And I assumed put something in a fund balance. And I said, okay, right? But it turns out there's no fund balance. There are signed by you requests from council for $85,000 new vehicle for the mayor, $60,000 vehicle for the comptroller. My car doesn't even cost that much. So anyways, stop treating the city like a credit card that you won't have to pay or make interest only payments on. Don't kick the can down the road. And that's what I request. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Axel Iverman, 61 Magnolia Avenue. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking against the budget. There are two things that you can always rely on in Mount Vernon: poor services and outsized property tax raises year after year. And this budget does not disappoint in that respect. We're again over the state property tax cap, 2%. We're at 5% last year. We were over 7%. None of the surrounding communities do that. Once again, the city is late with the budget. Nobody even bats an eyelash about that charter violation anymore. Although all of you swore to uphold the charter, but it seems to be a sport just to ignore it at will. The city has raised our property taxes by almost 40% in the last 5 years. Again, 40% if you factor in the fees that were that went from taxes to fees, garbage and sewer. We seem to be in a state of perpetual budget crisis. Yet last year, all of the elected officials gave themselves huge raises, conveniently hidden in some budget contingency line. You didn't even have the nerve to put it in the budget when you knew you would be doing it. 40% for you, Madam Mayor. Council got 52%. Controller, who's not here, got 46%. Considering that we are constantly crying poor, that is unheard of. That is tone deaf. We have failed departments at City Hall, like the building department. The state threatened to take over. A consultant that the city hired can't even get the most basic information data out of the department. The department budget increased by 70% over the last 5 years. And it's still terrible. That's failed leadership. If you have looked lately at any of the real estate services like Zillow in the Westchester area, you go to our surrounding communities, there's no properties for sale. You go to Mount Vernon, it's red. Everybody's trying to sell their properties because we have lousy services and high taxes. And as government officials, that's on your plate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Corinne Bell, 51 Beechwood Avenue, Mount Vernon, New York. I guess just a couple of concerns. The biggest thing that I guess looking at the budget is that we're talking about labor and benefits, which is $49 million, a third of the budget. Yet still we're talking about a 17 head or 17 and a half decrease in FTEs for the city, which doesn't seem to align. I'm not sure how many people work for the city, but I don't even think that's 1%. So I'm just looking at the increases in our labor and benefits, but yet still we have such a paltry decrease in the city. One of the big things, I work in finance, the biggest budget line item in most companies is what you pay people. You want to affect change in the budget, you really have to look seriously at that, which brings me to my next point. Has the city considered or thought about an FTE study across the organization to figure out how we can streamline, what we can automate, use technology to get our people to do the right jobs in the right time, in the right space? I know a lot of us spend a lot of time doing administrative tasks that we could probably automate so that we can use our brain power for something that is more constructive and goes for the benefit of the city, number one. My second point is that I'm looking at the revenues. Again, the year over year revised over the proposed budget, not even a 1%, it was less than 1% when I calculated it. If we're not decreasing our expenses or if they're going up 5% or whatever was said, but we're only increasing our revenues less than 1%, you can see where that delta starts to come in, and that gap will just continue to grow. We'll never be able to get out of that gap if our expenses are outpacing our revenue 400% and 500% in terms of growth. So just looking at those points are things that as a city, I definitely think we need to consider and look more at. And on top of which, if we're talking about revenue growth, it's hard to come to the city and ask the homeowner to keep paying taxes, yet still we haven't done everything in our power that we can affect and pull the levers on to decrease expenses, but also to increase our revenues. And that's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you very much.
Seems like we just left
You were
last night. Yeah, that's what I meant. It's like just a continuation. So Thomas Keller, 12 Pasadena Place, 10552. I got this email today, Voice of Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon's mayor and city council proposed a 5% tax increase. This will raise taxes above the 2% New York State tax cap. These same city officials gave 17.5 million of our tax dollars to developers. Maybe you can comment on that. I don't know the people that produce this, but I'm on their email list, I guess. I may owe Mr. Thompson and Mr. Eberman an apology. Over 5 years, the base year being 20, your first year as mayor, non-compounded, it's a 26% increase. When you compound it, I'm sure it's over 30%. And if you add the fees, the refuse fees and the other fees, as a base 1 year and then a $200 increase each year, probably 35%, maybe more. I think you can do a better job. Cannabis. We're counting on human frailties, cannabis, red light cameras to raise revenue. I mean, can't we do a better job? And that lady last night that said we should have signs wherever there are red light cameras, not just entrance to Mount Vernon. So that begs the question, are we trying to stop accidents or are we trying to raise revenue? I would hope we're trying to stop accidents. And putting signs up where there are red light cameras, not just entrance to the city, may help that. Light industrial ventures, I'm all for that. Non-polluting light industrial ventures, storage areas, whatever, that's good. You're going to ask the state to increase the sales tax from, I think it's 8 3/8 now, isn't it? 8.375 to 8.475. It's kind of a joke. Why don't you just go to 850? 8.475. Okay. Just kind of one thing from last night. I tried to get a hold of Ken Silva, but I didn't have a chance to call him today. But whether the school district certifies 19 months and 20 days from July 1st to February 20th, going back to a couple of years, it's still going to be a liability, whether it's February 20th in that year, or whether it's May, or whether it's July. And I think you should have that in your statement, statement of condition. Balance sheet. Sorry, balance sheet. Do I have another minute?
That's only 3 minutes.
That's 3 minutes.
I thought it was 4 minutes.
No, it's 3. That's for public hearings. It's 3 minutes. And you spoke twice last night, like twice. So, I mean, are you saying something different or new or? The audience is signaling 3. I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Mm.
Do you have, yeah, I mean, the whole school thing, I think that's.
I was gonna get into
conversation going
pilots, but
down.
Mr. Gallagher will address some pilots.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't have a chance. This is the first time I've seen this budget. In past years, I've gone over the budget painstakingly and made recommendations, and basically none of them been accepted.
Good evening. I guess I've already been given an introduction. My name is John Gallagher. I reside at 165 East Livonia Avenue. I've been doing these presentations, well, let me phrase it correctly, these dog and pony shows since 1979 when we formed Concerned Property Owners of Mount Vernon. And I can tell you right now, this is a dog and pony show. And the way I say it is because this budget is not going to decrease from 5%. It's going to go down a little. The big ticket items are going to remain the way they are. So what we're doing here is just a dog and pony show. However, what we have to look at is the tax cap that was implemented in 2011 by former Governor Andrew Cuomo. To the best of my knowledge, since 2011, I've been attending almost all of these meetings, if not most of them, and I haven't spoken at all of them. I don't recall the city council once implementing the tax cap, which means it's a 2% cap that's raised, the ceiling. The city can't go any higher than that, or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower is what the city should go by, has not been implemented, with the exception of the council. For 4 years, one council person did vote to put a tax cap in, but was overruled by the majority. It hurts. When you're in a city that's controlled by a mayor, I don't think there's a separation of power here, okay? Checks and balances is what makes a government work, a democracy, checks and balances. You got a one-party system in here. It could be all Republicans. It doesn't matter. You don't have checks and balances. And you do not have checks and balances when you have a city that's led by a strong mayor. Until you change these people, and the way you change it is you vote them out of office, you have demonstrations, you have, this place should have been packed. The rate of inflation is about 2%, a little over 2%. They're asking for 5%. I can go into the previous years what the rate of inflation was, and they've exceeded it. Or you take legal action, which I've done many times with them to slow them down, or at least to take them a look at. You're not going to get anything done on this. You're going to get a 5% increase, and you're going to have to live with it unless you do something about it. And that's legal action, that's referendums, that's petitions. They don't listen to you. They do whatever they want to do. Ask yourself, if you were an employee and you walked into your boss and you said to him, I'm going to get a 50% raise. How do you like that, my boss? I don't think you'd be there too much longer. Well, that's exactly what they did to you here, okay? They violated the charter, and I'm waiting for somebody to bring a lawsuit against them because I will join. I am tired of bringing lawsuits myself against these people because they do whatever they want to do. Let's talk about pilots real quickly. You want to talk about what's going on in the city? It's the mismanagement. And it's not only this administration, it's been years before, it's been the council before. We've developed these, we let these developers, carpetbaggers come from out of town, and they run our city. They don't pay their taxes. You pay their taxes for them. They put kids in the school system that's cost us about $40,000 per student, at least now. Most of them are special ed, and they pay minimal taxes. The word is pilots, not American airline pilots, not United Airline pilots. Pilots were put into use. I will wrap it up. Pilots were put into use by this country with the IDAs for the purpose of commerce, retail, manufacturing, not housing the friends of these politicians that get tax breaks and make all of you people pay for it. Wake up, Mount Vernon, wake up.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Next, speaking against the budget.
Good evening, community. Good evening, Mayor, Council President, Comptroller's representative. So I'd like to reiterate a couple questions that I've asked in the past to dissatisfaction, frankly, because they were never honest answers. Specifically around our public media infrastructure. I understand last year that there were allocated something like 500, I think it's about $500,000. I got to go back and check, that were appropriated as an expense against public access. Maybe I shouldn't quote that number, but it's a pretty large number. And I was also told that there was a particular amount of money. I know there are payments that come from cable carriers, but now there are no fees apparently being paid according to this budget. So I'm wondering why we're spending money on a cable television system that we're apparently getting no money for. That's a concern because the public media is kind of my pet peeve around here, because I really believe our administration, not just this one, frankly, Mayor, so don't take it personal. I believe our officialdom really cares nothing for the public voice. And that's a problem in a so-called democracy. So I was really taken aback 2 weeks ago when I saw the council, well, I saw the BEO approve, and based on the council's apparent willingness to approve another $200,000 for what you're calling an AV improvement in this room, the memorial room, and whatever else concerns in this building. I remember saying as chair of the Cable Advisory Committee that that was one particular function that other budgets, not on the taxpayer roll, could actually be solved. But now we're going to spend $204,000 specifically. And I guess it doesn't matter if you're managing 150 million, maybe 200,000 is money to burn. It doesn't make you blink. But it seems to me like no one's diligently asking questions. Like, what are these 4 speakers on the wall? Do they even work? Does anyone assess them? I didn't hear that in the council, President. Frankly, it's really not here. I'm not here to interrogate council, but frankly, the mayor is willing to spend the money. And if you're willing to spend the money on something as important as the officialdom's voice to the public, and by the way, do we even have properly recorded official documentation that's not on Facebook or YouTube? Can we get a video of these public meetings as is supposed to be the case? I don't know. I see Facebook maybe on a regular basis quarantining these videos. So fine, you're going to put money into the proper production values to record and maybe display things. But what does the public have to say about that? Has the public even made an input that you care about? Does the public maybe want not just display of materials from the officialdom? Maybe the public wants to actually accompany their input to the officialdom with media. Maybe they want to play something back. Have we asked that of Mr. Perez, I believe it is? I don't know who he is. I don't know his role. Hasn't been introduced to the public. The Cable Advisory Committee apparently has had no say to the public about this $200,000. Are they even involved with this expenditure? Is that system back there supposed to actually amplify and properly record materials digitally and then make the public accessible? No one's explained any of that. Is the material going to be expensive? $200,000 is a lot of money for production materials. And it could be spent as a portion of a whole city facilitation of the public voice, which is what you're supposed to do on these kind of materials. It's minimal to you guys, but it's important to a democracy. Finally, I want to say, if you could actually speak to land use for farming. Nothing's been said about farming or proper land use for people who can't afford healthy food in a city that's lost 2 grocery stores in the last decade, in a city that can't afford real food. And God help you if a Whole Foods shows up here, because everybody will just take that as a slap in the face that it is, that you're willing to serve the rich and to hell with the poor. So that's my input on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Janice Colley, live on 110 Beekman Avenue.
Collier?
Colley.
Colin.
I'm a retired senior citizen. I lived in this community for 42 years. I've seen the changes. I'm being taxed for, my sister and I own a 2-family home. So we pay $100 or whatever it is for sewage or whatever the extra is for 1 family living. There's a tax on, a surcharge on water. There's, oh, by the way, I'm being taxed on my oil, 4% the last 2 years, which is new. In 40 years, we never got taxed for Mount Vernon for oil. Yeah. Yeah, that's new. Yeah.
I'm just saying that's not from the city.
Well, it's coming to the city because it's New York, it's Mount Vernon taxes that are on my oil bill. That's in the last 2 years. All I'm saying is that $20 here, $100 here. Wednesday, my garbage wasn't picked up. Yeah, I'm paying taxes. We pay our taxes on time. We pay everything. But services are not the way they used to be. I had to call up at 12 o'clock and find out my garbage that I put out at 7 o'clock was not picked up. Wasn't picked up for the whole day. So $20 here, the oil, the water here, the sewage here, and all these taxes being paid as a senior citizen, I don't know where to go. I don't know if I'm gonna stay in Mount Vernon because it's not fair. It's not equal. It's not balanced. You pay for services, you pay and you're on time with all your bills, and nothing's being given back the way it should be. And I worked for the city too as a school crossing guard. So I know what it's like. I've been under that service also. But I always give my 100% for whatever I do for my job. And I expect the same back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak against Ms. Crenshaw?
Good afternoon. Cynthia Crenshaw, 315 Monday Lane. I am against the budget. You are forcing senior citizens out of Mount Vernon, New York. I know personally 4 seniors that sold their house to these companies that say they will buy your house no matter what condition it's in. I know a couple of young men and their families that moved out of Mount Vernon to Connecticut because of the taxes in Mount Vernon. When I was in the diner just today, this person told me that he would move to Mount Vernon and that he would put his kids here in the system if our taxes was not so high, because Mount Vernon is a gold mine. We're connected to the highways, the subways, and everything else. We are not going to attract young families because, first of all, our school system is failing. They're talking about selling 3 of our schools. The taxes here in Mount Vernon is high. We fought you guys with that sewer and water taxes. Last year when we did the budget, the raises was not in there, not 50 and 40%. That was not in there. That came afterwards. And when you had the meeting to talk about that, you had it at 9:30 in the morning when people was at work and they could not come there. I know, because you know I was there and I talked about that also. We're going to have to do better. Mount Vernon is not where it should be. We are down in our schools. They're selling the buildings. Our taxes is high. We're paying water bills, you know, the added fee on the water bills. And now you're coming to us for a 5% maybe increase. You are moving us out. The senior citizen cannot continue to afford this constantly. And like I said, I know personally 5 families that had to sell their home because they could not afford the taxes, and they sold it to the developers that you see on the street that say they will buy your house no matter what kind of condition it's in. I know families that's moving to Connecticut because of the taxes. We are going to have to do better. And when you all took these jobs, you know what your salary was last year, but you gave yourself a 50 and 40% raise. Who's paying that? The citizens of Mount Vernon. And now you come in with another 5%. You're moving us out of Mount Vernon. And we are the backbone of Mount Vernon, the senior citizens that been here for 50, 40, maybe 60 years. So just consider what you're doing. Let us try to work together, not only with the city hall, but with the board too, which they are in desperate need also. But we cannot attract young families in Mount Vernon if the city hall, the library, and the school system is not on one accord. It's just impossible to do. So just think about that. We need people to come into Mount Vernon, but we must do better. 5% definitely against. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crenshaw.
Mhm.
Anyone else to speak against the budget? Anyone else to speak against the budget?
Hello, everybody. My name is Peter Sahalis. I've been in Mount Vernon for quite a long time. Been coming to council meetings, and I have the same problem from the first time I came here. Well, not really, after a short while. The first meetings were actually pretty productive. I've yet to get anybody to respond from the council. I've been here numerous times asking for help. Ms. Gleason, the only one that reached out was Mr. Mr. Box Hill. Yeah, by phone, and we never followed up on any meetings. I don't mind paying taxes if I was getting something. I'm not in Greenwich, Connecticut. We don't have a beach. We don't have country clubs, but the taxes are comparable. It's not so bad if you get something for your money, but when you're totally ignored by government and they shut down your house and they try to seize your property illegally, Sam was witness to it, and there's videos and there's evidence and nobody wants to look at anything. I'm being deprived of making a living. I got to sell property to pay my taxes. I owe a lot of money. I stopped making money because the city is holding me back. Police department, DPW, building department, they don't respond. We had a water main break, undermined the whole street. They come by to hurt you, but they don't come by to help you. The problem with parking everywhere in Mount Vernon, the bus companies take all the street parking everywhere. 3rd Street, Columbus Avenue, Fulton Avenue, numerous spots. When a bus pulls out, there's ample room to put a car in the same space. Cars take 1/3 the space of a truck. These are simple solutions, common sense solutions, can make life a little better and don't put a burden on the taxpayers, the people that have to provide money to pay the taxes. They need parking spaces for their customers. Nobody will listen to you. So I'm waiting for your response. My telephone numbers are the same. Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak against the budget? Is there anyone who would like to speak against the budget? I'm going to say it one last time. Is there anyone else left in the room or on Zoom who would like to speak against the budget? So we close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the budget? And I've purposely not asked my staff to do as has been done, you know, in years past, and they have not traditionally done it before for years. And I was a commissioner at once. We were all mandated to be here and everyone had to speak for the budget, right? That's just drawing out time. So is there anyone who would like, I mean, if there's something that you have to say as department heads that you feel you need to say and is burning, then you can, but you know, I'm not asking for you to come forward and just to speak for the budget. Is there anyone who would like to speak for the budget? Is there anyone who would like to speak for the budget? Last time, is there anyone who would like to speak for the budget? Okay, so those speaking against the budget has been closed. Those speaking for the budget has been closed. And so the hearing comes to an end. I have taken almost 2.5 pages of notes from those who have come forward. I'm sure my colleagues in government have done the same. I'll just say some very basic comments. I believe we had 1 opportunity zone. We should have had far more. I don't know how that did not happen because New Rochelle had like 8 and Mount Vernon is more impoverished. So that was kind of before me. Don't understand how we only had 1. I don't think, well, you know, when it comes to foreclosures, the city hasn't done them in 10 years. And so I don't think anyone's been trying to rob anyone's equity. And we're not even focusing on that right now. We're focusing on tax liens. And as I stated last night, for those who were not here, foreclosures have not been done in the city of Mount Vernon in almost 10 years for a reason. And let me just be very brief in explaining to you the foreclosure process. Foreclosures, the city cannot even begin what they call an in-rem process until a person has been behind in their taxes for 2 years. Then you go through an in-rem process and you have to then move towards foreclosure. The last time the in-rem process was in place was when Comptroller Maureen Walker was here. She did the in-rem process in 2014 and 2015. And there were foreclosure sales in 2016 is the last time there were foreclosure sales. Her 2015 would have been certified, those who were behind in 2015. In 2017, she would have done her next round. That ended her term. She was not reelected after 20 some odd years as the comptroller. And so in 2018 through 2021, the comptroller at that time never followed the in-rem process, never moved at all for foreclosures. And so that entire process stopped. When we received a new comptroller in 2022, which is Comptroller Morton, he had to go in and do an audit of the taxes at that time because there were taxes that were collected, taxes that weren't collected, taxes that were sent back to the residents, checks that were never cashed. As he did the audit in 2022, just to make sure that the city had the proper records, he then began to send out tax collection letters, not just regular tax collections, but back collection letters telling people to come on in. I know that the city council then passed, along with the comptroller and the board of estimate, a foreclosure prevention payment plan. And we ran that and operated that for about 2 years, giving people an opportunity to do a down payment and pay off their taxes. And payment plans, yeah, through a payment plan, because the goal is not just to take people's houses arbitrarily and profit off of them. It is to collect the taxes, not just to take people's houses for their equity. And what we then did is went back and asked the state, because there were some people who were really in the hole and didn't have a 25% down payment. We worked with the state and they moved it to a 10% down payment, and it gave people a longer amount of time to pay off their back taxes. And that's where we are now. Now, there are tax lien sales that will happen. That again emanates from the tax collector's office, which is the comptroller, who leads this process, who works with the office of the mayor and with the city council, because the city council has to legislate it and the board of estimates still has to pass it, but it is led by our comptroller. And I know that they are starting with the commercial properties first, and then they will also move to some of the residentials, because we've given people 3 years for the payment plans. We didn't just wait 3 years for the payment plans, because there was the Supreme Court decision on Hennepin. The city did not have guidance yet from the state as to what they could do around the foreclosures. And so it did not make sense for us to go through with foreclosures and then trying to do foreclosure sales then, because if we did foreclosures the way foreclosures had typically been done, and you would have received more money and held on to more money and spent the money that was the profit, we would now have to go back and refund that money and send it to the state. And so we were right in not moving until the state gave clearer guidance on what the new foreclosure process would look like in the state of New York. And so we are at that space. It hasn't, unfortunately, just been no one wanted to move and foreclose or do tax lien sales. It's that changes, people coming in, the process not being done for 4 years, puts you back 2 years for every year that it wasn't done. I have all of your Ms. Collins will look into the sales tax because that's a tax initiated by the industry, not by the city. So. And also to be clear again, our sewage and our refuse fees have not increased. They have stayed the same since 2021. Mount Vernon was the last city to institute these fees. There are probably fees that should have been instituted 14, 15 years ago. We say sometimes you get better services in other communities. Well, they charged for them. All of our surrounding cities, the only one that does not have a refuse fee is Yonkers. And Yonkers doesn't have a refuse fee because they have like 4 big shopping districts in Yonkers, which helps in big commercial space as well. But all of our other cities and even some of our towns have sewer fees as well as refuse fees. We held off for them as long as we possibly could, but it was hurting Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon, when it comes to the tax bills, 62% of your tax revenue goes to the school district, 25% of your tax revenue comes to the city of Mount Vernon, and 13% of your tax bill is to the county. So Mount Vernon, the city operates on 25 cents of the tax dollar that you pay to all 3 institutions. We collect the county taxes and we send 13% of it up to the county. And please know that we are trying to work with the school district because we are one tax base and we cannot afford to make the lawyers rich as the city and the school district and the library becomes poorer and poorer because of lawsuits going between the 3 entities that all share the same common tax base. You know, we will take all of your comments, your suggestions, your questions, your criticisms, and go back to the drawing board. Like I said, this is a tight budget to begin with. I know that I am very much in favor of employee pay-ins from everyone to our medical benefits, because that is very important. We all have to pay our fair share, and I have no problem with that. And was already in my presentation. And we'll go from there. And so thank you all for coming tonight. Really appreciate you taking out your time. Whether you feel that it was worth it or not, we are here. We hear you. We all own homes and we pay the same taxes that you also pay. And so I don't get to raise the taxes and not pay them. I have to pay the same taxes that we raise. So thank you very much. Do you have anything else? Everyone have a good evening.